On their way home from school, members of a crew who call themselves Backdoor impede Sally, Heather and Ollie. As Ollie is beaten into submission, Eli Jang arrives and takes care of them, which resulted into Ollie being amazed and introducing himself. The eventual tragedy of Hostel begins by the time Heather and Ollie meets Eli Jang. In a month that has passed, Heather and Ollie continues to come over Sally's place. They keep on returning for the same reason that they like Ellie. Sally lives in a building that was left by her deceased parents. Warren, Derek, Max, and Ellie are also orphans who lives with her. But now with the consistent return of Heather and Ollie, Sally becomes troubled with the expenses of 7 people, including herself. Later on, Ellie gives out a sum of money to her. Ollie becomes curious on how he acquired it. So he follows him at night, asking him to blow the gaff. Ollie then praises Ellie and tells him that he wants to live the way that he do. He asks him again on how he makes all those money. Ellie shows him how by picking a car's lock. That night, Ollie Wang learned a lot of things from Ellie. With Ellie putting again money on the table, Ollie becomes confident and tells the boys that he also knows how to make a lot of money. Dusk came, and they proceed to break into a residence. Ollie seemingly finds a number of jewelry and impresses Ellie with it. Unfortunately, the couple who lives in the house arrives. Ollie clutches the man on his back, helping the others to escape. But he was overpowered. When the man catches a view of Ollie, he comes to recognize him. And it was his own son. The house that Ollie and the boys robbed was revealed to be his own house. He did it just so he can be acknowledged by Ellie. Since he doesn't want to embarrass himself in front of him, he hits his own father, making an opening for them to escape. Warren madly questions his morale for what he'd just done. Ollie replies and complains on why they can't understand him. He mentions that he's jealous of them and wishes to be an orphan. Ollie implies that he was mentally and emotionally abused by his own parents. Living a suffocating life, not being able to do a single thing he wants. Ellie butts in and tells Ollie to go home. Hearing that, Ollie becomes anxious and wants to redeem himself. He decides to steal valuables from a group of minors, using Heather's photo to deceive and blackmail them. He carries in, impressing Ellie with the jewelry he got, asking him if he can be like him. Ellie asks why, since he's not happy at all. He then tells him briefly on how he earned impure funds as a kid by doing what others told him to do. He asks Ollie again if he still wanna be like him. Ollie still says yes and wishes that he was with him during those times. The leader of Backdoor, Darius Hong, then arrives. Ellie fights Darius tooth and nail and eventually won by strangling him. After chatting on the rooftop, it was spearheaded by Warren for them to exist as a family, even though they weren't related by blood. After all, they all leave 24 hours a day with each other's company, aside from Heather and Ollie. Eli Jang was the one who manages to come up with the name Hostel, which means shelter. The evening falls and the group was eating dinner. As Ollie is seated in a corner, he thinks to himself, why didn't he become a part of their family? And as if Ellie read his mind, he comments that it's because he still has a family he can go back to. Ollie becomes frustrated and believes that it's not fair since he also still has a family, which is his cat. On another occasion, Sally makes an announcement on why don't they adapt kids at her place who have nowhere to go. But the group asks about the problem that comes with it, which is money and cops. Ellie suddenly suggests to create a point organization. Ollie agrees and compliments the idea. But Heather disagrees since the system relies on crimes. Ollie becomes annoyed with Heather gradually changing Ellie. Night came. While Ollie is watching on the sidelines, a 4-to-1 fight is ongoing. It is between Hostel and Gun, the person who manages the 4 major crews. And Backdoor was supposed to be a part of them. Unfortunately, Gun dominates the fight. To make Ellie pay for messing with Backdoor, Gun decides to dispose of Hostel. Ollie then interrupts, saying that he knows a way to earn a large sum of money, introducing Ellie's idea of point organization. With all things considered, Gun decides to make them a part of the 4 major crews. An ordinary day makes an appearance. Heather having a chat with Ellie. Others playing a video game, messing around, and just enjoying the revamped first floor. Cutting to the night, Ellie and Heather make moves with each other. Subsequently, Ellie wakes up the next morning to an uproar. He looks into the window and sees cops ahead of the building. The new ground was already shattered. Warren is struggling with the cops, Sally is sitting weeping like a child, and the duo are on their knees asking for the prosecutor's favor. The chief prosecutor, which is revealed to be Heather's mom, catches a wind of Ellie and her daughter together. In a room, Ellie is confronted by the prosecutor. as she nonchalantly announces his crimes. She remarks that she understands his circumstances and didn't care. She suddenly slaps Ellie, asking on why did he mess with her daughter. The prosecutor then states the reason behind his parents' disappearance. She remarks that it was because he makes people around him miserable. She asks again another question, if he wants to ruin Heather's life. Hearing all of that, Ellie sheds a tear and decides to stay away from Heather and Hostel. Going back to Ollie. Ollie is studying under the supervision of his father. He reveals to himself that this is not what he wanted. He just didn't want Ellie to change because of Heather. He thought that Heather would be the only one taken and didn't know that Hostel would be ripped apart. He then promises that he'll get back to Ellie. Sally started going to the academy again. Heather sees her and tries to apologize. She also wanna reveal that she's pregnant. But Sally didn't listen and blames all of it on her. Heather cries while also blaming herself. She confronts Ollie and asks where Eli Jang is. Ollie lies, replying that he didn't know. Although with Heather's persistence, he was persuaded and gives a phone to Ellie. Gunn advises Ellie to not reply since he's just established a new hostel. Ellie ignores the text as he remembers what Heather's mom told him. Ellie finishes Gunn's training that he has been doing for months. But despite his advice, he wasn't able to restrict his longing for Heather and eventually replies to her. Heather then receives the message and frantically replies that she's pregnant. Unfortunately, Ellie wasn't able to receive the notice since Ollie filtered it out. Ollie thinks Heather is lying, so he pretends to be Eli Jang, telling her to get an abortion. Ollie wonders if Heather finally gave up since he hasn't heard anything from her lately. As he enters the place where Ellie stays, he sees Heather confronting Ellie about the conversation they had. Overwhelmed by her emotions, she slaps Ellie, leaving him clueless. Ellie then sees Ollie holding two devices and immediately understood what happened. He realizes that this is for the better and proceeds to chase out Heather. Heather is shocked and accepts it, saying it'll be the last time they meet. But she questions him on how could he tell her to abort their own child without taking at least some responsibility. Ellie is dumbfounded with a sudden disclosure and runs after Heather's taxi. But he wasn't able to catch up. Eli Jang goes to Ollie and proceeds to knock him, asking what he has done. Ollie reveals what he did and reasons out that Heather was just trying to fool him. Hearing all of that, Ellie continues to beat him up viciously. As a result, Ollie Wang awakens fear within him. Ellie tries to call Heather, but the one who responded was someone from the clinic, asking him to hurry. Ellie hurries to get to the hospital, but Gunn frustratingly prevents him and remarks that he will only let him go after the trial. With Gunn letting Ellie go on purpose, he was able to pass. But unfortunately, since she was found too late, Heather dies. As Hostel is grieving, Sally blames herself and regrets that she didn't hear her out. With Heather's mother overwhelmed with sorrow and anger, he blames Ellie and curses him. She says that if only he didn't tell Heather to abort the baby, she wouldn't kept it disclosed and none of this would have happened. Despite knowing the truth, Ellie acknowledges all of it. The core members of Hostel are astounded from what they heard. They abandon Ellie, leaving him alone as he pictures what he'd just lost. Ellie goes to the hospital and cries as he gazes at his newborn daughter. Ollie, on the other hand, attempts to kill Ellie's cat but is saved by Jerry Khan, a member of the 4 major crews. As Jerry took the cat and left, Ollie was then seized and raped by Darius, who ended up going to a juvenile center for that. As it was raining, Ellie stops in front of their base. Warren chases him out, saying he doesn't have any place there. Ellie then leaves his goodbye and disappears. No one knows where he went. Maybe he's wandering the streets again. But this time, with his daughter Yenna. With the disappearance of Ellie, Gunn decides to train and make Ollie the head of the new hostel that Ellie left behind. As time went by, the original group became Hostel B, while Ollie's became Hostel A. With him as the new head, Hostel will eventually become the worst crime organization. Derek and Max eventually leaves Hostel B to earn some money, while Warren stays at Sally's side, remarking that they can come back anytime. After the major change, it was already too late when Hostel B found out the truth about the incidents. Ollie continues to grow his faction, walking down the path that Ellie strayed off, while also trying to rebuild Hostel. He imitates his style and makes his own version of the original group. Not only did he find replicas of Derek and Max, he also made child duplicates of Ellie. Ollie and Hostel B continues the hunt for Eli Jang. The most important responsibility that the 4 major crews need to adhere is paying monthly dues to Gunn. It was revealed that Ollie Wang decided to pay on Hostel B's behalf Essentially, they're still part of the crew as a whole. The day came where Gun collects Hostel's sum of the month. Ollie questions him what would he do when he meets his demise. Gun replies that he'd go to Hostel B and instead make them pay the dues. Ollie then remarks to leave them alone, asking for a favor. The man states that he only pay dead people favors. Ollie smiles, saying that he's not gonna die. But just in case he do, he asks him to keep his promise. Ever since the disappearance of Eli, 3 years have passed. He is now located in Central Seoul, studying high school while also working to sustain his daughter. With the help of Vasco from Central Seoul, Hostel B was able to outrun Ollie in pinpointing him. He then eventually comes back to take over Hostel B. With a member of Big Deal named Jin Jang pulling the strings, an impeding war between Hostel B and the powerhouses from J High School versus Hostel A and a few members from Big Deal is on the way to Gangdong. After a while, the war finally shows up. The struggle of the powerhouses from J High against Hostel A and a few members from Big Deal begins. As the war rages on, eventually, Warren and the 2 leaders of Hostel arrives on the battlefield. Ollie waited earnestly for Eli Jang. He waited for so long for this reunion, believing that he was the only person who once made him fear. With Derek, Max and Sally stepping foot in the war, Hostel B is now gathered, leaving Ollie alone once again. As Ollie Wang approaches Eli, he was hit by a bus. The one who hit him conspired with Jin Jang for betrayal. From the start, Jin had already planned on betraying Ollie and Hostel. But Ollie ultimately figured it out and offers everything he have just so he can get a moment with Eli. Finishing his big picture, Jin grants Ollie Wang's last favor. Ollie and Eli then disappears and goes back to where it all started. Ollie came first, followed by Eli, remarking to end it once and for all. The vicious fight finally starts. Ollie angrily asks why did he leave and why didn't you let him in? Ollie was seemingly overpowering him. In the end, Eli was only trained by Gun for months, while Ollie was trained for years. Even though Ollie won for a moment against him, he still feels empty inside. It is revealed that the weapon Eli's using was his leash. With it set aside, the real fight starts now. The fight transitions on the rooftop with the momentum on Eli's favor. As Ollie is being clobbered, he questions the fear he felt 3 years ago. As a kid, Ollie was emotionally abused by his own parents, which caused him to feel no emotions. He wanted to be like others, so he practiced facial expressions pretending like he felt it. Even when he hit his own father and stole from minors years ago, he still couldn't feel anything. The rest of Hostel B arrives and gets demolished by Ollie. Seeing Sally, Ollie desperately asks her to tell him the answer regarding the emotion he felt back then. Looking at her made Ollie remember that she had a friend. He thinks to himself and regrets what he caused to Heather, not knowing that she was really conceiving a child. Thinking about all of these, he finally figured it out. Realizing the emotion he felt years ago and finally being able to feel a genuine emotion, he cries and smiles at the same time. Ollie then chooses to jump off the rooftop. And was glad that he's choosing to die out of his own guilt, gaining the freedom he always wanted.